Well, it's primary day in 5 states, including the big prize tonight, Pennsylvania. So the question is, can Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton finally put it away in their respective races? Well, we'll take a look at the math and debate it with our political panel. And we also take a look at whether Bernie Sanders is hurting the Democratic Party by continuing to stay in the race and at the same time going after Hillary Clinton. Then we take a trip around the world, if you will, to some foreign policy hotspots with a former congressman who served on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. We'll get into all that and bikers for Donald Trump. Yes, trust me, it'll make sense, kind of, sort of. All right, people voting in 5 states as we speak. The stakes extremely high, and as usual, it's a whole lot of drama, especially in the grand old party. Here's a preview. The Cruz Kasich alliance was in full effect and under attack by GOP frontrunner Donald Trump.
If you look at these two guys, one is 1 for 41. The other one, he's like a total disaster.
Today, Trump is expecting a clean sweep in the 5 states up for grabs, including delegate-rich Pennsylvania. But his rivals, they're focused on next week's primary in Indiana. The goal? Stop Trump by Kasich conceding the state to Cruz.
There may be issues on which we disagree, but more unites us.
I can spend my resources most effectively, and the same is true for Senator Cruz. What's the big deal?
This is Hillary Clinton in Philadelphia, the location of the Democratic National Convention. Exactly 3 months from this week, confident that she'll be back to accepting her party's nomination.
It is not enough to diagnose our problems. We need to know how to solve them. And then we've got to bring everybody together to do just that.
Rival Bernie Sanders pointing out during a late-night rally in Philly, unity could be a tough task for Clinton.
This campaign is succeeding because we are listening to the people of this country and not wealthy campaign contributors.
All right, we'll get to the Democrats in a little bit, but if today's primaries and the rest of the GOP race is all about whether Trump gets to that magic number or not, let's get a check on the delegate math, and for that, let's bring in Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent.
And Rich, we'll do the headline first. Donald Trump cannot win the nomination tonight, and thanks to the odd rules of the delegate process, even if he has a great night, he may only pick up a few more delegates from today's 5 primaries than he did in just New York last week. Trump begins today with 844 delegates, leaving him 393 short of the magic number he needs to win the nomination. Work through the details, and that means he needs to win about 58% of all the remaining delegates to win the nomination before Cleveland. But each state voting today plays by different rules of delegate allocation. In Connecticut, Trump needs to win the state and all 5 districts for a clean sweep. In Rhode Island, Trump cannot win them all, assuming anyone else gets 10% of the vote. That's a pretty low bar to clear. In Maryland, Trump needs to win the state and all 8 districts to win everything. In Delaware, it's winner take all. And in Pennsylvania, Trump can win 17 delegates if he wins statewide. But the other 54 district delegates are not bound. Trump can win all 18 districts with 99.99% of the vote, and those delegates can still vote for whomever they want in Cleveland. So here's what Trump's best case scenario looks like for tonight. Let's say he wins a clean sweep of every delegate in Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, and Delaware, even though that probably won't happen. Add the 17 delegates he can actually count on from Pennsylvania, and he could win 118 delegates today, which is pretty good, but it still leaves him 275 delegates short of the promised land, and it leaves him hoping for help from those unbound delegates from Pennsylvania, Rich.
And would he still be trending that with the balance of the delegates available that he'd get to that magic number? Is he on pace for it with that kind of math tonight?
If he has that kind of night tonight, yes, although those 50-some-odd delegates in Pennsylvania still throw the whole balance off.
Yep.
He'll need to win a majority of those, and he's not going to know he wins them until he gets to the convention floor in Cleveland.
All right, Andrew, thank you. Now let's bring in the rest of our panel tonight. Jessica Proud, she's a Republican strategist and PR expert with the November team. Dominic Carter, of course, political journalist and author. And former Democratic New Jersey Congressman Steve Rothman and Andrew, who you already met. All right, Jessica, first off, do you think it was good strategy Cruz and Kasich having this alliance, if you will, or no?
No, in a word. Well, the fact that they telegraphed it so obviously was ridiculous, I thought. It just played right into Trump's hand that the process is rigged.
Why did they wait till almost May?
Exactly. And I think, I think people that are kind of watching this from afar, when they hear the word collusion, they're rightly upset about that. So I think it was a mistake for them to do that. It certainly allowed him to continue to dominate that debate and that narrative. Clearly, Trump is bringing in Paul Manafort and some other seasoned campaign veterans. They are paying close attention to the delegate process in Pennsylvania. The state Republican chairman there is behind Trump, and they're working for him. I think it'll be a very good night for him. But they're setting up a scenario where even if they don't get to the 1237, if they get very close, they are going to make it incredibly difficult for anyone to claim that they should not get the nomination.
And some of the players and also the principals. Kasich and Cruz, within 24 hours, they already seemed to not even be agreeing on what they were agreeing on.
Right, and they didn't. That was the thing that surprised me the most is that they would be so obvious in saying that was the plan, but then secondarily, the fact that they didn't really have their talking points hashed out and how they were going to respond to it when they know that Trump was going to attack them on that. It seemed very ill thought out.
Do you think, Dom, this is more a credit that Trump has really tapped into something, or when you look at the alternatives and that it's the gang that can't shoot straight? I mean, anybody at this table would have said, whatever you think, whether you agree with it, it's the rules or not, Trump's line that it's a rigged system and the party bosses in the back room are trying to take away the vote of the general public, that's been working. Now, you'd have to be blind and deaf not to see that. It's been working. It's resonating. So then these two guys pull a deal that they're going to, you guys vote for him, and then I'll do this. I won't be there in Indiana. It'll all work out. How did they not think that this was going to come off tone deaf?
Well, Cruz and Kasich thought that they would gain traction by this arrangement, and it completely blew up in their face.
But, shouldn't they have seen it coming that it wouldn't go over well?
They thought that it would work well with the anti-Trump movement. But to answer your question, the first part, Trump has tapped into something. He's resonating with the Republican base. We don't know what's going to happen in the general election. He's resonating with the base. He's going to have a very good night tonight. And even with the math that may not play his way, what you can't ignore is win after win after win. There's no way they can take the nomination away from him.
Congressman, we talked before, because you've been a delegate before, and certainly you haven't walked into something like Cleveland's going to be. Good luck with that one, Andrew. But just how much do you believe either if they say, if you don't win on the first ballot, pal, you ain't getting it on ballot 2 and 3, how much does the establishment underestimate the reaction, or how much do you think guys like me who think that all hell's going to break loose don't understand that the attention span that everyone's counting on really is going to last for about a couple days, and then whether it's Kasich, whoever emerges out of it, we'll move on to the next story?
Well, I think there are different analyses of what's going on in the Republican Party. I just spoke to some friends in D.C. who, on the Republican side, who were telling me there's great unrest there, which is not news, but that to confirm the notion that those folks in the Congress, those Republican leaders, are willing to trade the presidency to keep a Republican House and a Republican Senate.
They'll go along to get along with Trump as to not upset the apple cart?
No, they're willing to do whatever it takes to avoid having the weakest Republican presidential candidate. And at the moment, in those folks' thinking, Trump is the weakest. I'm not so sure that that's the case. I think Donald Trump is an enigma, a mystery, and anything could happen. That's why we call it a jump ball these days between the likely Republican candidate Trump and the likely Democratic candidate Hillary.
And I spoke to a political reporter earlier today who covers Trump events, and I said, by the way, who's there in the crowd? And now you can't, with a big brush, to paint everyone. I go, are they there because they really buy into the Trump message? And he said some, but some are there for the show.
Yeah, of course.
The folks that are there for the show, we know some folks here that are smart people who went to New York on that night. It blew me away, and they're proudly showing me the photos. They say, are you voting for him? Like, I don't know. how much of that translates in November to say, hey, listen, I like this reality show for the last year. I'm going to watch it through the final episode, and I'll go with him on election night? Or how much do you say, oh, it was fun and all fun and games, but this is the guy with the launch codes. I'm not going that far.
Yeah, and that's been the fear and the internal debate in the party. And, you know, you heard Manafort again over the weekend on the Sunday shows say, well, this is all, and down in Florida at the RNC meeting last week, say that he's just been putting on an act and he's going to start to become more presidential, and which we have not seen quite any evidence of that yet.
Eating habits,
but I think it's like this internal schism that's going to go on between him, between what he knows is fueling his success versus what he's going to need to do if he is the nominee to be competitive in a general election.
If I'm going to just add on to Jessica's point, you know what I thought was such an interesting news development was Charles Koch, one of the Koch brothers, one of the richest people on the planet, and a major Republican donor, saying on the Sunday ABC show that it was possible that he could vote for Hillary Clinton, and that he found Trump's remarks about Muslims to be monstrous, and Cruz's remarks about carpet bombing in Iraq to be very frightening. You know, I'm not so sure who was delivering Mr. Koch his talking points, but it does at the very least argue for your point that there's great unrest within the Republican establishment, and it is anybody's guess as to what will happen.
Saying, yeah, I'll consider Hillary Clinton. And if you want to talk about bad return on investment, he's probably $1 billion in the hole the last few election cycles, and now he's thinking, hey, maybe Team Hillary. All right, coming up next. Instead of giving up, Bernie Sanders digging in. Is that going to hurt Hillary once she finally locks things up? We'll discuss that after this.